Good afternoon. My name is Bernadette Shaughnessy. I'm a second-year law student, and I serve as treasurer for Jus Vitae. And I am literally so excited to welcome you guys all here today. I first met Teresa, or encountered Teresa Kenny 5.5 years ago when I was a freshman in college, and she came to our campus to give the exact same talk she's going to give today. And I remember that day so vividly because I sat in the audience and I was like, I think I missed a really important biology lesson. No one had ever told me how my body worked. And I think that's a really common experience for a lot of women. Through charting, I was eventually diagnosed with PCOS and endometriosis. And over the years, Teresa has helped me to conquer or manage most of my symptoms. Because of her help, I have clearer skin, have lost weight, I have so much more energy, and I'm just like more comfortable in my own skin than I was at 19 by a lot. This is Teresa's job. She helps women to live healthy and happy lives that we all deserve to live. And I can't imagine what my life would look like today if I had never heard her speak. It is an incredible honor to introduce her today. Teresa Kenny is from Omaha, Nebraska. She has practiced as a women's health nurse practitioner for over 20 years. She is co-host of the Hormone Genius podcast, and she is the author of the Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole. She's married and has 8 children, and today it's my honor and joy to welcome her to Notre Dame Law School.
Thank you so much for letting me be here. I'm so excited. And thank you, Bernadette, for that introduction. That was so kind. I'm so excited to be here because I feel like this information is unique and it's empowering to all of you. And I hope you come away just learning so much about your body that you didn't know before. But more than anything, and this is true to what Bernadette said, that really your health is in your hands. And because the reason why I started the Hormone Genius podcast is because I wanted to empower women, but men too, to be the genius of their own hormones and their own bodies. And again, in order to be an expert at anything, you have to be educated, right? And like Bernadette said, somehow I think all of us missed quite a bit of education in this area. And so this is where I hope to fill in some blanks. So again, 23 years of experience. I'm going to try to, there's so much I want to cover. So I'm going to try to go really fast. This is obviously just my work is really helping women with lots of underlying reproductive health problems. But I do it in a really different and unique way, probably than any, other nurse practitioner that you might know, because I don't use any synthetic hormones. I don't use any birth control in my practice. And if you're a woman, you kind of realize once you've been to an OBGYN or a women's health care provider, that birth control is kind of the mainstay of what we use to treat women's health issues. But I just have never used those. And of course, it took me kind of understanding my own body to decide to do it that way first. And also to understand that I kind of felt like maybe there should be an alternative for the women who didn't really want to take synthetic hormones and maybe wanted to actually try to find the underlying root problem to their issues, which ends up being super exciting and actually works. So as Bernadette said, I have a crazy large family. This is a picture of my children drawn by my now he's in third grade? I don't even remember, right? You got so many kids. You're like, so this is my picture of them. I don't even have another picture for you. 8 kids. And this is my husband, Dan. And I just like to show this because we've had a crazy life. We wanted 8 kids. We actually, when we were engaged, said, how many kids do you want? And I was like, 6 to 8. I was like, great, me too. So we're a little bit unusual, right, in that way. But he ended up being a stay-at-home dad for about 8 years while I went back to work full time. And he became a self-published indie author and now has written over 50 books, including some fun books in the cozy mystery space. So I just think that's always fun to share. So again, I started this podcast in 2019, right before the pandemic, called The Hormone Genius. And it's taken off. It's been really exciting because, again, this is a truth. In fact, I was at a talk not too long ago. And afterwards, this young woman came up to me, and this is not uncommon, but just like a lot of like, oh my gosh, I just didn't know this information. How did I not know any of this before? But she started to cry and she said, you spoke the truth that I've been waiting to hear my whole life. Well, that was really powerful. And the truth is not something unique in the sense that I don't have some knowledge I came up with. But again, we don't get to hear this information. And so when we do the first time, sometimes it really hits us that this is powerful stuff about our human body and about who we are and how we work and how our hormones affect everything in what we do in our life. Really, truly. And I don't think we think about that. So I started the Hormone Genius with my co-host, Jamie Rachi, and it's been really fun. We've had over 350,000 listens across, the entire world. And we have listeners all over, of course, lots of fans in my area. But it's been a joy to do. So check that out. I have information and cards over here if you want it. And then I was able to write this book with some help from an organization called the Vitae Foundation and Lumen Press called the Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole. I did not actually come up with that title. I thought it was a little long, but it's been great. The book is for like high school to college age women. And again, we talk about men too in it too, but it's geared towards women for them to really have a guidebook, you could say, to health and wellness, but also to educate them about their cycles, about their hormones, and to give the information, again, we just don't get when we're young. And so we're going to raffle off. I've got one copy here. So we're going to play a game, and whoever wins that game is going to get a copy of the book. It's my only one, so lucky to that person. All right, this is, again, what we don't learn in sex education. Oftentimes when I think about sex education, I think about it as kind of this risk mitigation thing. We often are told, okay, there's this thing, sex, you're likely going to do it, and you need to risk mitigate things. And of course, the risk mitigation is pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases. So in reality, we learn about all that risk mitigation. We somehow forget that it would be important to understand the actual reality of our bodies and the actual reality of us as human persons as fertile. So each of us, male and female, have a fertility, right? This ability to procreate. And it would be helpful for us to understand that and to understand the hormones that affect that, because in actuality, hormones affect our behaviors too. So if you don't understand how your hormones work, and I feel like this is so true of women, especially, like you can't understand even sometimes the behaviors that we choose in reality to where we are with our hormones. So that's something, really to think about. All right, so let's take a pause here to do this game, because I'm going to quiz you on how much you actually know about your body. So if you haven't played Kahoot in a while, maybe it's been since high school, we're going to play a Kahoot. I think we do this in the classic mode, right? So if you would like to join me in putting in the Kahoot, you guys have done this before, right? Awesome. It's always good. Also gives you an idea of how many people are here. Yeah, so you always have to worry, like, oh gosh, we've reached a player limit. Sorry if you didn't get in fast enough. In high school, you always have to worry about some names that we can't even call out. I'm trying to see if anybody's got some inappropriate names. All right, is everybody ready to go? Here we go. All right, this is going to quiz you on what you know about your fertility. Number one, the pituitary gland in the brain is the control center of the reproductive system. True or false? The pituitary gland is the control center of the reproductive system. True or false? That is true. That's where you hear about what is the primary sex organ of the body. The primary sex organ of the body is your brain. So most of you got that, but not everybody. see how to go to the next one. Yeah. There we go. All right, Charlize. A woman can ovulate more than once in a menstrual cycle. True or false? Can a woman ovulate more than once in a menstrual cycle? True or false? This is so primary and basic. You guys, a woman can only ovulate once. In fact, a woman actually can only get pregnant in a really short amount of time, in a window of about really 24 hours, but it's extended by something you'll learn about later, a little bit longer than that. Some animals like rabbits can be like sexually stimulated to ovulate more than once, but that is not true of any human. There is only one ovulation per menstrual cycle. Number 3, the egg once released from the ovary lives 3 to 4 days. The egg once released from the ovary lives 3 to 4 days. True or false? That is false. So again, women, 1 egg per cycle, unless a woman releases 2 eggs in one ovulatory event. When does that happen? Yeah, fraternal twins. So that, again, but 1 ovulatory event when that occurs, but eggs only live at a max of 24 hours. So once that egg comes out the ovary, out of the follicle and bursts out, it's only alive for 24 hours. And of course, fertilization, it has to have a sperm that's present in order for that to occur. So how the heck did we all get here? Right. Number 4, men are fertile at certain times of the month. True or false? Men are only fertile at certain times of the month. True or false? That is false. Good job. So men are fertile from the time they go through puberty, about the age of 12, and they're fertile up until they are buried in the ground. All the time, you're fertile with each ejaculation. That ejaculation, unless you have some infertility issue, is a fertile ejaculation. And so it's very different than women who are fertile only, again, for a very short period of time. Number 5, menstrual tracking apps can predict exactly when you are going to start your period. True or false? Menstrual tracking apps can predict exactly when you're going to start your period. True or false? That is false. Good job. So unless you peed on your phone, a menstrual tracking app cannot give you that information. Now, can it be close if you have a regular cycle? Absolutely. But it's our bodies as women that tell when we are going to do the main event, which is not your period. And so it's only the biological data that we get from our bodies that will tell us exactly when we're going to start our period. So you would have to input that information into your phone to get an exact day, which is possible, very possible. Number 6, it's normal for a woman to have a clear vaginal discharge for up to a week in the menstrual cycle. True or false? It's normal for women to have a clear vaginal discharge for up to a week in a menstrual cycle. True or false? This is true, very true. It's the one thing we never talk about. When we were young and we went through puberty as girls, we talked about the period, and we think that's the main event. And I'm telling you, your whole life you've been missing out on learning about the actual main event, which is ovulation. You can kind of think of it as the red flow and the white flow. You have this flow of something called cervical mucus that tells you when the main event is going to occur. And the main event is ovulation, the release of the egg, which allows you someday to have a genetic person that's half of you, right? So learning about the main event is going to give you all of this incredible information about your body and your hormones. So it's not an infection. It's totally normal to have that discharge. And it's unique to every woman. Sperm can live up to 3 to 5 days in cervical mucus. True or false? Sperm can live up to 3 to 5 days in cervical mucus. True or false? This is true. And this is what expands fertility. So again, an egg only lives for 12 to 24 hours. So it only has that 24 hours for a sperm to be able to fertilize it, right? But sperm can hang around in this stuff we call cervical mucus that women have. And that sperm can stay alive, waiting, you could say, for the egg to be released. And that's what expands the fertile window for women at a max of 5 days. So women have a chance of pregnancy up to 5 days in a menstrual cycle. Number 8, women who are in jail are more likely to have committed their crime while PMSing, premenstrual syndrome. Women who are in jail were more likely to have committed their crime while PMSing. True or false? There has been actual studies to show that women who are incarcerated, when they committed their crime, they were more likely, significantly more likely to be premenstrual. How many of you feel like you're more impulsive when you're premenstrual? Kind of makes sense. Well, if you're willing to commit a crime, it's probably going to happen then. All right, Bernadette's up there. Number 9, fertility awareness-based methods, also called natural family planning, are 97% effective to avoid pregnancy. Fertility awareness-based methods, FABMs, sometimes called, NFM, natural fertility methods, are 97% effective to avoid pregnancy. True or false? This is true. And there's lots of different methods now who have proven this effectiveness in peer-reviewed studies. In fact, the CDC, I believe in 2020, had to update its kind of information on its website to correlate with the actual scientific data that shows that fertility awareness-based methods are more effective. It's not the, whatever you hear, the 85% chance of pregnancy. So that's great news for those who want a natural method. Number 10, women similar to men make the hormone testosterone. True or false? Do women make the hormone testosterone? Good, this is true. Women actually, testosterone is the most abundant hormone in your body. And still, men make a whole lot more than you do. But in reality, testosterone affects women's bodies on a daily basis. It affects our mood. It affects our ability to maintain muscle mass. It affects our brains. It affects our bones. It affects our heart. And of course, it affects sex drive too. But it changes throughout the cycle. And again, men are different. And theirs doesn't really change that much. Bernadette. I know. You need 3 things to become pregnant. What are they? Egg, sperm, and a uterus, egg, sperm, and cervical mucus, egg, sperm, and love, or egg, sperm, and pizza. What are the 3 things you need in order to make a baby? It is. I know it seems like it should be egg, sperm, and a uterus, but actually the essential 3rd ingredient to all conception is cervical mucus. In fact, without it, no fertilization can occur. Does anybody know why? Because the sperm uses the mucus when sometimes they get it. No, it's right. Because sperm do this. They swim. And can you swim in a pool with no water? No. So literally sperm have to have a swimming mechanism in order to get to the egg, because sperm go from deposited in the vagina, right, all the way up to the fallopian tube, which is where conception occurs. That's a long ways for a little sperm. And only one of them are going to make it. So they need this quality cervical mucus in order for it to get there. And again, I know it's kind of tricky, but you can actually have an abdominal pregnancy. So you actually technically don't need a uterus, but it's tricky. All right, number 12, what event of the cycle allows you to predict the onset of your next period? What event? Is it the period itself? Is it ovulation? Is it cramps? Or is it crying all the time? What event predicts the start of your next period? It is the main event. So the main event, which is not your period again, predicts the onset of your next period. In fact, the cycle is so stable for women, not before you ovulate. Before you ovulate, it's variable. When you ovulate, it could be on any given day. For most women who have a pretty regular cycle, it's probably between the days of 12 and 17. But to where you will start your period, from the point that egg comes out, it is the same amount of days for every woman. And on average, it's about 12 to 13 days. So if you can predict ovulation, you can predict to the day your period is going to start. That's powerful information. Last question. Men's sperm count has declined how much since 1971? Men's sperm count has declined how much since 1971? 10%, 60%, 0%, or 30%? It is 60%. Yeah, just barely all got that right. So I have a really great episode on endocrine system disruptors that I think guys would be really interested in it. In fact, it was my 16-year-old son who gave me the idea to do it. He was like, Mom, he's like, I was listening to Joe Rogan and they were talking all about hormones and like sperm. He's like, it's right up your alley. And it's all about like phthalates and plastics. And so I listened to that episode. It inspired me. I really needed to do a whole episode on endocrine system disruptors. So I think you'll really like that one. But kind of concerning that this is occurring. And testosterone levels equally have decreased in men since the 1970s. So things we've got to think about. All right. For guys? It could be, yes. Yes, anything that holds your testicles closest to your body because the testicles get warmer can kill your sperm. Who's the winner? It is. So Bernadette would like to pass her win to Amelia. Second place. Who's Amelia? Yeah. All right. Here. There you go. All right. Well, I hope it helped you kind of figure out at least some basics and what you haven't learned in sex education and how much you actually know. So, we'll try to kind of review this a little bit. There's just so much, but I hope, again, you want to learn more after this and you actually want to dig into learning about your hormones and your cycle. But it's more important than just fertility. And this is why this is important to anybody, whether or not they want to go on and have children or not. Because even in 2015, the American Academy of Pediatrics declared that the menstrual cycle was a vital sign of health for young women. Just like if I take your blood pressure, if I take your pulse or listen to your heart, that's a vital sign, right? And actually, our menstrual cycle for women is considered a vital sign. And so when it's out of whack, it's telling us that something isn't well in our body. So as women, we should care about this. And we should care about also kind of how it impacts us and what do we do about whatever issue that we're experiencing. So of course, an awareness of your cycle is important. We call it fertility awareness. You can call it cycle awareness. You can call it hormone awareness. But if you don't understand your body, you're not going to understand what's going on with you. And I can tell you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories of women who did not know this information. And it wasn't until they came to someone like me and I told them like why this was occurring or how their body actually works. And they're like, how come nobody told me this before? And I actually didn't know this information either. So when I was in nurse practitioner school as a 20-some-year-old woman, I didn't know any of this information. And I was experiencing stress and I wasn't feeling well. In fact, I was feeling pretty awful in nurse practitioner school. I had headaches, sugar cravings. I felt depressed. I felt anxious. I felt tired. I just didn't feel well. And my now husband at the time, he was like, Teresa, you need to go to a doctor. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. I probably should. So he's like, listen, let's just write down all your symptoms and you should go and take it to a doctor. And so I did. I wrote down all those symptoms and I took it to my family doctor and I said, I don't know what's going on. I said, I don't feel this way all the time, but I have these symptoms a lot of the time. And she looked at my symptom list and she goes, I think you're depressed. And she offered me an antidepressant. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm depressed. I don't know. But it didn't really ring true with me. I didn't really think I was depressed, so I didn't take the medicine. And I just kind of kept going. Well, it happened to be that I started working in a clinic or precepting in a clinic with a guy who was doing kind of this type of healthcare that I do now. And the nurse in that office said, hey, I see you're, here learning about what we're doing. Would you like me to help you learn how to track your cycles? And I was like, sure. So this nurse named Rosemary sat with me every time I went to that clinic. A couple hours afterwards, she taught me how to track my cycles. Well, sure enough, all of those symptoms that I was having, they weren't happening all the time. They were happening a week before my period. I didn't even know it was PMS. I didn't realize that when I would feel that pit in my stomach, that anxiety, it was always at the same kind of time of the month. So I was ignorant of my body. But when I started tracking, I was like, it all fell in place. The awareness of my own body allowed me to be like, okay, now I can tackle this a little better. So I was able to get my hormones tested and found out they were all a mess, probably just because of the stress I was under school, which I find a lot for people in college, law school. You probably are a mess. So thinking about those things and what affects your health, like your sleep and your nutrition, and those things are really important. But unless you identify it, you can't be empowered to take charge of it, right? So now you need to understand, like, how do I track my cycles, right? What are the things that I can do to do that? Well, you've learned about this one thing I call the main event. And the main event, again, gives us a sign. The main event is this very short window, but it has to do with fluctuating hormones in our body as women. In fact, so again, men, I'm just going to first start with them because they're kind of quick and easy, and then I just move on from them. Is that a problem? No, I really try to devote some time to men. I've even had 2 great podcasts with this guy named Dave on my podcast. Guys, you'll love him. He's awesome. But again, men, you're pretty straightforward. You make a lot of sperm, a whole lot. In fact, over 500 billion in your lifetime. It's mind-blowing. I don't even get it. Male testicles are inside the body. But they drop and descend outside the body when you're born, and then they have to stay there. And that's the skinny jean thing, right? You have to keep them outside because they're very sensitive to temperature. If you want to have children someday, please do not put your computers on your lap, and please get that cell phone out of your pocket. Seriously. Men, you'll become fertile at around 12, and you will be fertile for the rest of your life. This is why Abraham, who was like, I don't know, over 100 years old in the Bible, was still able to have offspring, right? So you'll be fertile forever. And this is not true of women. They are different. Men, you have this hormone. You have other hormones besides testosterone, but in general, this is your main hormone. And it's very even and stable. It actually is regulated by your pituitary. So again, for each of us, men and women, we have this brain that regulates through a lot of feedback mechanisms our hormones. But men, you wake up in the morning with the highest testosterone you'll have, and it slowly decreases throughout the day, but it's highest in the morning. But in general, you're kind of constantly producing it. In fact, I just learned this recently. Men, your testosterone rates actually decrease just by having children. And you think about everything in relationship to evolution. I'm kind of fascinated by evolution lately. But think about it. Men, you're basically out there, right? You're trying to make sure your genetics go on, right? Testosterone, you're a male, you're a leader, you'll fight, but also your job is to procreate. Well, once you do that, your job was done. And so your testosterone actually decreases after procreation and becoming a father, which is not a bad thing. It sounds like a bad thing, but it allows like a committed relationship in a sense. You don't need all that testosterone to go out and mate again and again and again. We need a man to stay with the child and the mother that he bore the child with, to have a normal family that actually in a society causes stability socially, economically, and in all other ways. So just interesting. I always think of evolution. Women, this is your hormones. This is why you're crazy. You're just not the same, and no one ever told you this. Now I would tell you, for those of you who were put on birth control when you were young, and this happens, right? 15, 16, I had painful periods, my cycles were a mess, I was bleeding for a month, whatever it was, I had really bad acne, and you got put on the pill and you stay on the pill until you're in your 20s, you don't have this. This entire kind of like ups and downs and swings your hormone completely taken away by birth control. And in fact, the period that you have on birth control, it ain't even a period. And most women are never told that. We're always told like the pill regulates your hormones, but actually doesn't regulate anything. It just puts a overlying synthetic blanket of hormones and stops the natural endocrine system that you have. In fact, I heard a Harvard OBGYN say this once: the biggest endocrine system disruptor that people put in their bodies is birth control. It purposefully disrupts the endocrine system. And here's the interesting thing. The pill has only been around since the 1950s, almost 1960 when it got largely introduced. We're in the largest female experiment we'll probably have of all time. Because in order to control fertility, we embarked on this journey of what does it mean for a woman to shut down her reproductive hormones for year after year after year. Now, the assumption is that it's just fine, right, to do that. It's just fine. But there is no data to tell us that. There's no long-term studies to really say if it is fine. And again, I'm not here to bash on the pill, but I'd like to say, let's just ask the questions. Like, you as women get to decide what you do and what you don't do with your bodies. But if you don't have knowledge, then you don't have the power to decide what's right for you. And so ask the question. First, you have to understand how your own body works, but then you have to ask, what does this medicine actually do in my body? Okay, so again, menstrual cycle, crazy hormones. If we just start from kind of beginning to end, when you're on your period, which we kind of call the beginning of the cycle, your hormones are very low. In fact, estrogen and progesterone are at their very lowest on the period. And you're shedding this lining. It's actually kind of the back end of it. You're just starting the thing over again, because the whole point of a menstrual cycle is to get this egg out for potential procreation, right? And when that happens, so the brain says right at the end of your period, about a few days later, it says, get this hormone called follicle stimulating hormone going so I can get this egg going. And so you will see this blip and increase in hormones. And the main hormone that's going to increase is something called estrogen. You've all heard of estrogen, right? And estrogen is an awesome hormone. In fact, it makes us feel it makes women feel confident. It makes us feel like our skin clears up, our hair is better when we have estrogen, our lips are actually fuller, your hips actually gain a little when you have a lot of estrogen. It is the female hormone. Why? Well, because it's supposed to attract the opposite sex to procreate with you. Hey, think about this. The next time you're ovulating and you're making that mucus, ask yourself how you feel. In fact, whenever I go do a talk, I always ask myself, where am I going to be in my cycle? Weird, right? But I ask myself that because honestly, like, I know how nervous I will get speaking to a group like you based on where I am in my menstrual cycle. If I'm where I am today is, let's see, I'm about day 4, 5 of my cycle. I'm pretty chill. My hormones are pretty baseline. I don't have a lot of nervous energy. Lucky for you, you know? But my estrogen is just starting to increase. If I was in my premenstrual phase though, it's not even something I'm controlling. I'm just telling you, I would stand here and it would be harder for me to get going. It would be harder for my brain to kind of work with myself. It's just the way progesterone is. Estrogen actually makes women verbally process at a higher level than men. When you're at your highest level of estrogen, they've done lots of studies on this, your ability to communicate as a woman is better than it can be at any time. Isn't that amazing? And that's why women love to communicate. And we're even better at it when we ovulate. So if you've got to give a talk, try to schedule it with ovulation. Not so easy. And then we've got this second hormone that happens. So again, when you ovulate, it happens around this 12 to day 15, 16 of your cycle. You're going to get this mucus. The mucus is solely being produced because of estrogen. Your estrogen goes really high. And you make this mucusy stuff, right? Because again, it's supposed to be able to be there for that sperm, should it be present. And when that egg comes out in this very kind of short event, which happens because of another hormone called luteinizing hormone, then all of a sudden the entire cycle changes. And I can tell you, as women, the more in tune you are with your cycle, the more you'll realize everything turns on a dime. In fact, I know this will sound weird to you, but my husband is so aware of my hormones that literally, I'm not joking, he can tell when I've ovulated literally by just looking at my face. And he's done it over and over again because there is something that happens. So again, women, notice this. If you've been in a long-term relationship, there are times when like you're attracted to your partner and you're just like, oh yeah, they're so great. And like, I'm attracted to you and you want to be really close. And all of a sudden, do they just annoy you? All of a sudden you're like, I don't know, your breath stinks today. I don't know, like whatever it is you're going on, it's not right. It doesn't smell good, whatever it is, it's not good. Women will all of a sudden, when she ovulates, she doesn't care about procreation anymore. And honestly, she's just chilling because she's getting ready for a baby. This is all hormonally, the way our bodies work as women. So progesterone makes us become inward towards ourselves. It's usually when women just kind of want to like, yeah, maybe I want to go out, maybe I don't. Kind of would rather just stay home, chill, watch Netflix, maybe clean out a closet or two. I mean, I wouldn't do that, but some people would. So progesterone makes us get ready. It prepares something. It's progestational. It's preparing for gestation. And if you notice and you're intuitive about that as a woman, you'll notice those changes. And like I said, my husband, he can just look. He's like, all of a sudden, he's like, yeah, you don't ever want to have sex with me again. Now that happens over and over. I only want to have sex with him, he says, 1 day a month. I'm joking, but he would probably say that. He's like, then you just don't. And I know that about myself. This is why I tell women who are in my office, have grace with yourself. Women will come to me, you're like, they're just newlyweds. Or like, my libido, it's just like, I just don't feel like it, I'm like, have grace with yourself. Your libido is not supposed to be high all the time. No, men, you are, again, because you're fertile all the time. So your libido is high. Women, it's not the same. Your libido is high when you can make a baby. That's the way God did it. Because he wanted to procreate the species, right? It's the way evolution works. So notice these things about yourself. It's kind of fun. All right, so again, you've got this fertile window. Women can only get pregnant for a max of 5 days. Can you figure out when those 5 days are? Absolutely. You can do it a variety of ways, and we're getting better and bigger with this in the whole fem-tech world. Now we've got people who literally pee on a strip every day, and they know exactly where they are in their cycle. They'll know if they're fertile or infertile every day. There's something called the Natural Cycles app that's been approved by the FDA, which is literally a temperature-taking system that's 98% effective as birth control to avoid pregnancy, all just by taking temperature. So the femtech world is like a $25 billion industry in 2023 because women kind of want to get away from synthetic hormones. We're trying to drink out of metal water bottles, avoid plastics. We're trying to help the environment. And it kind of doesn't make sense to be dumping synthetic hormones right into our bodies sometimes when we're trying to be natural, right? And whole. And the more women are starting to understand that, they're more like, wait a second here. Maybe this is a paradox. Maybe this doesn't quite make sense. What are my other options? And so they're asking those questions. In fact, I feel like in the next 20 years, there'll be a huge enlightenment in this area of women wanting to understand their bodies better, understand hormones better, and actually want alternatives instead of just suppressing their body or manipulating with hormones. So do you know, like, if you someday, again, want to have a baby, if you understand your cycle, that your chances of getting pregnant go way up if you just understand when you ovulate. So fertility awareness allows couples with normal fertility to be pregnant like 98% of the time within 6 cycles. And you also need to know that your fertility, especially as a woman, it actually decreases significantly by the time you're 30. In fact, the March of Dimes put out an awareness, like a whole campaign of this, that like women, like the biological clock thing is real. And like you're actually meant to have babies in your 20s, early 20s. And frankly, it's probably in the late teens, evolution again. Our bodies were actually meant as women to have babies earlier. So something to think about. Putting off having babies doesn't always like work out, and it can cause a lot of pain. And I see this because I work with infertility and miscarriage a lot. Waiting sometimes makes it harder, you know, so it's something to just really keep in mind. All right, how much time do we got? 15 minutes? You guys all good? If I keep going, you're all interested, it's good? Okay. All right, so, and I do want to take questions, so, you know, hopefully we'll have a few minutes for that, and I'm happy to stay afterwards and speak to anybody about anything personal. I'm always happy to do that. So again, there's this intersection between birth control and health, and this is what frustrates me for women, because I had a young woman come to my office the other day, and no joke, she had this like 3-page piece of paper she had in her hands, and she was shaking, and she's like, I need to give this to you. And I was like, okay. And she's like, this is what has happened to me. And she was on birth control and had been put on birth control by her mom, essentially, when she was 15. And she'd been on it, and she was 27, 28 that whole time. But that whole time, she was like having anxiety and depression and issues. And she kept telling the doctor, I don't feel well. Something's not right. And the doctor would be like, it's okay. You know, we'll just try a different one. Try a different pill. So she, of course, was put on different pills, and then, of course, given antidepressants, because I always joke that OBGYNs have like 2 things in their back pocket for you. When you walk in, they've got pills, birth control pills, and they've got antidepressants. Which ones do you want? I know it's true somewhat. Because they're not listening to women, and they're not listening to their concerns. It'll be okay. And she had realized at this point at 27, after becoming educated, that probably her symptoms could be related to these medicines that she had been taking and told she should continue to take for year after year after year. And she was shaking, and she said, I need you to read this. And she'd started a whole blog called #NuffSaid, because she was so frustrated that no matter what she went in to talk about in terms of how she felt, it just kept telling her, you're going to be fine, just stay on it. And even when she was telling me that, she was still on it. And so I gave her the permission, in a sense. Sometimes women, it's weird, but they almost need permission. You can stop it. It's okay. And she came back and saw me 6 months later, and I said, how do you feel? And she was like, it's the best decision I've ever made in my life. All of the anxiety went away. Do you guys know that, like, with the pill, there's a 70% increase in depression? I have this. In 2016, they've done these huge studies on Danish women. The Danish are really good at keeping data. There was a 70% increase of women who have depression on hormonal contraceptives, and a 3 times the risk of suicide, of attempted suicide. So, and again, these are just questions we deserve to have answers to. If these are risks associated with a medication, you deserve to know they're the risks so you can make an informed decision to take them, right? And we know about carcinogenic risk, which is that birth control does increase the risk of breast cancer. All you have to do is go on the International Agency for Research on Cancer. It's considered a class 1 carcinogen. And then blood clots, it's anywhere from 3 to 9% the risk. So again, birth control pills are synthetic hormones. They're not our hormones. They try to mimic our hormones, and they influence the brain. They influence the pituitary to try to tell the pituitary essentially like not to speak anymore. Stop your messages. Don't send the messages to the ovaries, and just stop the normal hormonal production you have. And when you have a period on the pill, it's just a chemical withdrawal. It's a chemical withdrawal from those hormones. There's nothing there that's really a real period. So the endocrine system disruptors thing. So again, it's not that what we have to wonder about, and this is, I've read papers on this, it's not just contraceptives, but it's pesticides and herbicides and all sorts of things, particularly plastics. But every toxin that we put into the body, and think about women, there's 100 million women worldwide on hormonal contraceptives. They're all going to urinate those into the water. And here's the problem. Your municipal water company, they were set up never to have to deal with these. So they don't get always filtered out because they never planned on having those chemicals in the water, which is why it's really important to drink filtered water. Because, I mean, it's not, like I said, these are just one of many endocrine system disrupting chemicals that we have. The water systems were never set up to actually take out. Okay, so common problem, again, the birth control thing. And again, what I work with is women who want the alternative, right? Does everybody want the alternative? No. But I am happy. Like, I call myself healthcare diversity because women deserve an option that's not birth control, right? Because there are women out there who say, like, I don't want the hormones. So what do they do? So I am the diversity. I can offer them all of the alternatives. And of course, I think it's a better approach because it's root cause, it's balancing, it's healthier for women because they don't have to go. There's a PCOS, guys. PCOS is such a common issue. It's like crazy now. Probably having to do back to the endocrine system disruptors as well. Birth control is the absolute worst thing to do for someone with PCOS because they're already insulin resistant and birth control makes them more insulin resistant. But every woman who has PCOS that goes to an OB/GYN, oh, well, birth control is the standard of care. It's not. It shouldn't be. It's the wrong medication for it. And so women who track their cycles, this is just an example of charting that I look at sometimes. It's called the Creighton model system. They know their bodies and they can get on top of their problems sooner and I can correct them and I get to watch the chart change so that we can get to the solution then. And we can actually get their body healthy and well. So, and I can share these slides with you guys. I'm happy Bernadette has them. So if anybody wants the slides, so you can have these resources. These are all resources in finding a doctor who actually practices very similar to me, finding a method of charting. I think it was mentioned that someone here charts FEM, and this is FEM. FEM is just a free app. And the reason why there's not a lot of these, but FEM actually allows you to interpret your fertility. Instead of menstrual tracking apps, oftentimes interpreting your fertility for you, which is basically just the old rhythm method of our great-grandparents' days. It's like the calendar method. So you want a more scientific way to track your body. You have to go with a one that knows how to do that. And FEM is just an easy one because it was set up to kind of help younger women and it's free. So if you haven't started charting, it's the first thing you can do. Start learning your body. Listen to my podcast. I will talk about this stuff over and over again because we want women to have this information because it's empowering to them. If you want to follow people that are a lot cooler than I, follow the Balanced Bears. Anybody follow the Balanced Bears? Well, if you like this stuff, they're adorable and they're funny and they talk all about the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle and how you can exercise with your cycle and how you can eat nutritionally with your cycle. They're very hip and cool. And like I said, they're all about helping women understand their bodies because they know, just like me, that you didn't get this information and you deserve it. And you deserve actually to have periods. So if some of you had really bad periods or continue to have bad periods, listen, there are so many lifestyle things that you can do to make your periods better. And they give you all of that information, so many lifestyle things that you can do. And you didn't know that. And now you will, by following people like this. And there's a whole list of like books. And so I put those there too, that they recommend, which some of them, I've read too, like Beyond the Pill. If you're on the pill and you're like, you become educated, and you're like, you know what? I think I'm ready to ditch the pill. How do I do that? What does that mean? I'm afraid. What do I need to know? This naturopathic physician does an amazing job just going through birth control. She's not anti-birth control at all. She just wants to, again, have people have informed consent. And so she gives you lots of tools in order to come off safely and healthily. And so she's a great read as well. This is how you can find me. I'm, again, happy to answer any questions today, but you can find me. I'm in my clinic in Omaha, and I do telehealth. I can only do it for people in Iowa and Nebraska right now. But if anybody has any questions, we got 5 minutes. So I would love if anybody had any questions because that's the best part. Yes.
So I have questions about, I guess, what you would like. don't, like their bodies don't naturally adhere to that. So, for example, I have never naturally, I have mine, I have to get and my natural hormone my body produces naturally is testosterone. My normal level is at the same level as it'd be a lower range for a man, but it's in that normal. And so I've never been able to use like this period tracking. I don't get it. So I was guessing, like, how do you handle those cases?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm sorry you have to go through that. That's a lot of work for your cycle and everything. So it is a unique situation, so not the common situation. But what you have to understand is, whether or not you actually are fertile or even, have fertility. So first and foremost, and I don't know this about you, so I can't answer that question. There are certain situations where people are actually infertile based on their condition. And so family planning then just wouldn't be an issue potentially. If there's still some sort of question about family planning, then these systems, and especially even the more kind of scientific ones where you're charting your, hormones literally on a daily basis using a monitor, like, your fertility because the hormones are literally being told to you. And so when someone is in a hormonal state that's very steady and they're not having any fluctuations, again, there is no fertility, just like on birth control, right? And so whether you do that through body temperature, even cervical mucus can be charted very specifically to actually prove that someone is infertile. Because again, like I said, you have to have cervical mucus in order for sperm to literally go anywhere. So it's able to be done. That's all I can tell you. But like I said, you first have to understand, do I even have fertility based on my condition? So you'd have to kind of talk to your doctor about that. But like there's a new system called Anido, which is, again, a hormonal method of tracking literally all 4 hormones. So someone literally would know every day if they had any changes in their hormones at all. But like I said, cervical mucus, body temperature can kind of exactly do the same thing.
Are things like IVF generally more effective if the actual fertilization occurs outside?
Well, I mean, again, are you asking like if IVF would be effective in your case then, because I don't recommend IVF because I think IVF doesn't get to the root cause of infertility. So my approach is always, what is the problem and can I go to the root cause and correct it? And so I wouldn't recommend IVF because IVF it's a slippery slope on all levels of financial, not getting answers to the woman, treating the woman's body like a machine. And so I don't really love that approach at all. And it's not very effective in terms of success rates either. So, but again, each person's condition is unique. So I'd have to know kind of more to know, kind of what I would recommend for someone like in your situation. Yep.
Any water that you recommend to us that will drown first?
Yeah, so I mean, the zero water one is pretty good. So it's a little bit better than your Brita. And then if you want to go high level, you would go to the Berkeley. Berkeley's kind of your highest one. If you want to know a really good site, though, that gives you the best information on that kind of, is the Environmental Working Group, or EWG.org. They go through water filtration systems. They go through your beauty products. There's like a whole, it's called Skin Deep kind of information about your beauty products. You can check to see how many toxins are in your beauty products. You can actually check your water from your city to find out what toxins are in the water in your city particularly, and whether yours are over the limit. So EWG.org. Mm-hmm. Yep. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah.
I know I get a lot of and with our examination for Hashimoto's, how would that separate sexual hormones, and then also is Hashimoto's
mm-hmm. Yeah, so Hashimoto's, I mean, it's something I deal with a lot with patients. And so first and foremost, like hypothyroidism is an important condition to treat. And Hashimoto's is 80% of the reason why women get hypothyroidism. So it's an autoimmune condition, and it can be caused by a variety of things. It's most important to understand that if your thyroid, which is right here around your trachea, which is a very important hormone to your metabolism, your heart rate, your body temperature, to everything, that if you're not making enough, then you need supplementation in order to make sure that your body functions normally. There are a lot of situations where people have to take that medicine because if they didn't, they'd just be in trouble, right? So it's not a bad thing to have to take thyroid replacement therapy. I always look at it as like, your bucket is only so full, and like the bucket's got to be full for your body to work, right? So we just got to fill the bucket a little bit more. Now, Hashimoto's is something that you can really go deep with. There are some people who really truly believe you can cure Hashimoto's. And what I always tell my patients is that you have to desire a pathway. And so there's pathways in Hashimoto's that are very lifestyle oriented and go real deep. Dr. Isabella Wentz, if you want to go real deep, just look up Dr. Isabella Wentz on Hashimoto's. But there's some people they're not willing to do that. And that's okay. But could you cure Hashimoto's? I think it's possible, but unlikely for most people, just because they're just not able to do the amount of work it really actually takes, which is a lot. Does that help? Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm going to start. There's a couple over here, and then I'll get to you. Yep.
So I've been doing research on my own. I heard that women are more susceptible to getting sick during the ovulation period because there are hormones that are usually meant to stop foreign objects when it's into the body. But sperm is foreign objects, so in order not to attack it, it like backs off of it. But then if you're in the presence of a sick person, you might also be more susceptible to getting their sickness. Is that true?
So let me see if I'm understanding your question. Are you saying when you ovulate, your body's immune system changes in order to allow receptivity to the sperm? Yes. It's a great question. And the answer is yes, but probably not at all levels you're thinking of. So the body is very, very complex and really smart. So in a lot of ways, the receptivity part can happen locally. So it doesn't mean that the whole systemic whole person, that means their whole body goes down into an immune low state. But at the entrance of the vagina, it changes. So that sperm receptivity is there. At the uterine, fallopian tube, even pelvic, there is all sorts of immune system changes that do occur in order to make sure that there's a receptivity to, like you said, like a person that shouldn't be there, a foreign invader, however you want to see it, so that the body's like, no, this is okay. In fact, that same thing happens when women are pregnant. Anybody with an autoimmune condition knows usually that their autoimmunity gets better during pregnancy because the body's immune system changes during pregnancy to try to quell it as much as possible for anything that's going on so it doesn't attack the fetus, right? So it's amazing. Like our bodies are truly amazing. And there's just so many unique things that change. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you said that men's fertility levels go down after a child. Mm-hmm. Is that like, is there something?
Not fertility, testosterone.
Mm-hmm. Are they able to like meet their wife essentially that she is pregnant and have the child, or do they go down after every ejaculation?
So good questions. Thank you for asking it. So fertility does not change based on testosterone levels necessarily. Okay, so just because, and when we talk about testosterone levels, make sure I don't confuse you that like changes might be small, not giant changes, not like going a man from like 800 to 100 then, but it changes, and this is so each ejaculation would be fertile again as long as the man had normal fertility, whether or not their testosterone changed after having children. And I'm not an expert in this. This is something I've just been listening to recently, so. I'm not going to expand too much just because it's not a perfect area of knowledge for me. But this is interesting too with men and women. So women, your testosterone actually increases in the presence of men when you're ovulating. So women get a surge of testosterone. And this is kind of, and I just learned this recently listening to, who was I listening to? Is it Andrew Huberman? No, I was reading a book. But like women, drinking alcohol for men actually makes their testosterone go down and less likely to have higher libido. Women, when they're ovulating, if they drink alcohol and they lose inhibition, their testosterone actually goes up. Alcohol makes their testosterone go up. So, I mean, like, I think it's an important thing to know. I think it's important for women to know that they are more likely to want to have sex during ovulation, right? Because that's the part of their time of their cycle that they can procreate, but also that alcohol changes your testosterone. And even then, of course, you lose your inhibition, right? Because it's a depressant. So it's something empowering to me to make sure as women, like we're not put in situations that are one, dangerous to us, but two, also situations where you're like, wake up the next day and you're like, well, crap, what the heck? Why did I do that? So understanding your body and understanding where we are and understanding our hormones, to me, it's like I can make better, healthier decisions. So I just think that's really helpful. Yeah. Yes.
So you talk a lot about the pill, but are all forms of hormonal contraception like the same, or are there some that might be a little bit better than others? Like I know the IUD is more like localized form of birth control.
And that's a great question. So the IUD was always thought maybe it could be better because it was a localized thing, right? You put it in the uterus, but it's got, which kind of frankly still confuses me, like 5 years worth of hormones it's going to keep going with. But no, we've actually found out, and especially through these studies, the ones in Denmark, that they actually do go systemically, the same way other hormonal birth controls do. So they still affect our body in very much the same way. And that Dr. Jordan Brighton talks a lot about this. I think in some ways there's probably less damage in a sense sometimes with different forms, and maybe I don't understand quite enough about the IUD to say that for sure. But when you add in like the synthetic estrogens and the progestins, you have this combination of synthetic hormones that, you know, increases the risk of blood clots more significantly. So there's more dangers in that. There may be the risk of breast cancer goes up with those estrogen synthetic progestin combinations. We even learned that about women taking hormones in menopause with synthetic progestins. So they made different layers of risk, you would say. But in general, you can easily say that all risks to some degree apply. And the risk that a lot of women don't understand is the increased risk of autoimmunity with hormonal contraceptives, the increased risk of depression and anxiety, the increased risk of gut problems, carbohydrate intolerance, changing the lenses of your eyes. So your actual like cornea lens changes on birth control. So you actually don't absorb nutrients the same way. This has to do with the gut issues. Your labia becomes extremely dry, and some women can end up with like, basically like, and I've treated, I think in the last few years, 4 of these women, they were on birth control for so long that their labias became so inflamed because there was so much atrophy in them. They had such painful sex that like one lady just stopped having sex with her husband completely. So, you know, these are risks that, again, most doctors, they don't go through the little ones or what, that sounds big to me, but, you know, they might go through like the blood clot thing and what to watch for. But outside of that, like you want to understand the whole way, because again, we're all these cells, right? When we put a medication into our body, it affects everything. And so we want to understand how those medications affect everything to make a good informed choice about what's best for us. Yes.
Sorry.
You want one more? Yeah. Okay.
So after your jobs, a lot of women, social media, were telling other women to delete their period trackers because that data potentially criminalize them if they decided to get an illegal abortion. But clearly period trackers and things like that are very helpful to any woman. So do you have any thoughts on how to address those concerns about?
Yeah. No, I don't, only because I've never actually thought about that question. I think I understand what you're saying in terms of people tracking and then knowing where they are in terms of pregnancy. I just know that when I talk to a woman about when she became pregnant, I am so thankful when she understands her body and she knows when she conceived, because the truth is yeah, it can be hard if women have irregular cycles to know when pregnancy happens if you don't understand your body. So from that standpoint, a period tracking act is probably not helpful then, right? And even just regular people going to their doctors, sometimes getting an accurate due date can be a problem. So to me, it just means we deserve as women to be empowered to understand our bodies better on all levels, to be able to make informed decisions about everything.
So just to follow up on that, so there was there was an app that you mentioned,
The FEM. Mm-hmm.
Would that potentially be able to show or private data about when Meg got pregnant or when she
I have no idea in terms of the privacy part of it. Like, of course, you'd have to read each different app and whether they share data with people and how that would all work. So that part I wouldn't be able to answer for a specific app. So you'd have to just look and see.
Can we get things around?